Good afternoon, everybody. Today is April 2nd. What day is today? Oh, Wednesday. I'm losing track of time, folks. Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. The time now is 3:47 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I apologize to everybody for not having made any solo episodes recently. I've been having some guests on, so that's been taking up my time. And I just didn't know what the hell to talk about. I mean, I have a whole bunch of ideas for episodes, but that doesn't excuse me. Habits are things that you should keep doing. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope life is good to you. And I hope that your April got off to a good start, whether it started off with a good April Fool's joke or a bad one. I hope that you were able to see it as just a joke. Sometimes we just need to joke around. Anyway, as you can see, the title of this episode is 9/11. And the reason I mentioned I wanted to talk about things that happened in our lifetime where the world just seemed to stop for a moment. Like some people told me that in 1963, when President Kennedy got assassinated, the world stopped. And you hear old stories of people walking down the street and just stopping to look at the TV, in the window in a TV store, all the TVs, with the news talking about the story. Wherever people were, they stopped and they cried and they knelt their head. Whether you liked him as a president or not, he was still a world leader. He was our American president. And a lot of people were, and that was a point in time, where the world kind of just stood still. And I'm sure there are other things that happened over the next 40 years between then and 9/11. But my earliest memory, and I was no youngster then, was 9/11 because the world seemed to stop. My world seemed to stop. The immediate world that I knew in, which was New York, stood still. Everything stopped. There were no planes. There were no trains. I don't even think there were any cars in the road. We were just all in shock. It's kind of like we were walking around like in slow motion. And for once in our lives, everybody kind of just took the time out of the day. Like people weren't even angry at each other. Normally, we're always getting mad. We're cutting each other off. We're cutting each other in line. We're all complaining because we have to wait or because this one got a bigger portion, that one got. There was none of that. And I think it's because we were all in shock. We just didn't have it in us to be our own selfish selves, if you will. People were holding doors open for each other. People were not in a rush when they were in a car. When you went to work, people didn't pressure you to get your paperwork done or deadlines or anything. Everybody was just kind of walking around in a haze. And I would say it probably lasted that way for a good 3 months. 9/11 was September 11th. I think probably around December of 2001. Jesus, I'm so used to saying 2021, 2022. We slowly started getting back to, if there ever was a thing. Now, where were you? Where were you in 9/11? If you're old enough to remember, if you were a kid when you were in school, did the teachers tell you about 9/11 or did you have to wait till you got home for your parents? I remember I had kids in school at the time. I remember I picked them up from school and there was even like a special dismissal. We had to go up to the school and pick them up. And I remember they didn't know anything about it. Where were you? What state were you living? What part of the world were you in? How did you find out about it? I remember what I was doing at that time. It was my normal daily routine. I went to work. I might have even checked into work. I had a field job, and I probably had stopped to get at the ATM to get myself some money because I was just a cash person. I didn't use debit cards back then. I remember I needed my cash for the day or for a couple days for gas and food. And I remember sitting, I must have been hearing about it on the radio when it happened. That's when I think I learned about it. I was sitting in the car with the radio on. They talked about a plane crashing into a building, and they didn't know if it was an accident or a mishap. And a few minutes later, when the second plane hit the second building, that's when they knew this was, no accident. And I remember this people were very upset. I remember I worked in a building that was only 3 stories high, but I remember one of the workers in the building was very, very upset. She said, "What happens if they come and they decide to fly a plane into our building?" Now, the odds were it wasn't going to happen. Our building was only 3 stories high. Terrorists want to go after big buildings with a lot of people, but that's the way people felt. See, her sentiments, I'm not making fun of her. It was demonstrative of the way people felt at that time. People felt insecure. And then there was the anthrax scare right after. Then there was a shoe bomber. And then, of course, we went to war with Iraq right away. So it was a tumultuous time in the world. I won't just say America, because I think the whole world stopped and paid attention when 9/11 happened. I'm just curious how it affected you. Did you know anybody? I know in New York you could smell the burning in the air. You could see the smoke in the air. I worked in Queens, but you could see Manhattan, and it just, the whole area was affected. To me, that was the first time in my life when the world just seemed to stand still. The next time that happened in my lifetime, in which, I saw a significant change, was the pandemic. I think I discussed the pandemic in another episode I wrote, COVID. How did it affect you? Is life better? Is life different after COVID for you? But I wanted to talk about how the world stopped still. I would say probably the world stopped still even worse with COVID than it did with 9/11. Because at 9/11, we had to get back to business. We had to get back to work. Even with the shock and all, we had to go and get back to our lives. We couldn't just stay home. But with COVID, we kind of stopped living our lives for 2-3 years. I would say probably things didn't start getting back to normal with COVID probably till halfway through 2023, And it was the same thing with COVID. The streets were empty. I don't even think people were riding planes or trains or going to restaurants. Everything was a ghost town. The only thing different with COVID is the internet was more developed. Back when 9/11 happened, you didn't have Zoom. You didn't have Facebook. I don't even think they didn't have YouTube came out in 2005. Things were different. So we didn't have a virtual world. So people kind of had to get back into the saddle. Whereas with COVID, we had Zoom. We had working remotely. So people didn't have to come out. All they needed to do was hoard their toilet paper and their food. And then they were good to go. But then again, it wasn't really healthy for people. It wasn't mentally healthy for people to be isolated. And a lot of young people who grew up, virtually with their nose buried in a phone, going to school virtually from home, they don't have the same social skills that people who normally would be in an integrated setting would have. Those are my observations. And to me, those are the times in life when we were all in shock, when the life that we knew came to a standstill. Now, thank God, we're back to business. Most people are back in the office working. Some people are hybrid, but the wheels of motion, of continuity have resumed. But I'm wondering, when's the wheel going to fall off again? What's going to happen next? Is there going to be a terrorist bombing? Is there going to be another plague? Is there going to be some natural disaster? You can't worry about these things. I'm just looking back, and I'm remembering these things, having, spun around this world a few cycles in my life, being on this earth for, a good half a century and change. I'm just sharing my observations. That's all. I'm putting my 2 cents into the mix. Anyway, how many minutes have I been talking here? I've been talking here I can't even see the freaking clock in here. I always forget where to look to find out how long I've been talking. Guys, I got nothing else to say. We still got the interviews. There's some glitches. I'm new to this video interviewing thing, and some of the interviews are 10 minutes and 5 seconds. Now, they're always switching the place where they put the time. I'm getting used to this video interviewing thing, so some of the episodes, the interviewee, their face might not be in there, or one episode we talked for an hour and it didn't even get recorded. I'm learning to edit. It's a whole new ball game. So I just ask that you bear with me if you're a listener or a viewer. Bear with me as I go through this learning process, the learning curve of videos and graphics and editing. It's a whole new ball game to me. I had a great interview with a gentleman earlier today. I posted it up. He's a CEO for a call center, and I really enjoyed that conversation. He kind of motivated me too to continue with my podcast. It's nice to have people who come on and motivate you and encourage you to do what you're doing. And so I will continue to do this, even if sometimes I get 0 listeners. You can't stop just because nobody is giving you immediate validation. Validate yourselves, folks. All right, 11 minutes and 25 seconds. I don't know how the hell I went from 9/11 to motivation, but in a way, we need motivation to move on through good and tragedy. Thank you very much. I will be back with more information for you as soon as possible. Last word.